Former Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission and the member of the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, Advocate Pansy Tlakula, says she's confident that the IEC will do its work as prescribed by the Constitution. She has called on political parties to respect the IEC's work and its checks and balances during the elections. SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena spoke to Advocate Tlakula ahead of Human Rights Day, which is also International Day for the Elimination of Racism.
As a country, I think we have a lot to be proud of. Let's go back to 1994, the first democratic elections. There was no voters' roll. People could vote wherever they wanted, and that was a nightmare from the election management perspective. And look at where we are today. The IEC is revered as one of the very good election management bodies, not only on the African continent and also globally. So as a country, we have a lot of challenges when it comes to human rights. However, we can pride ourselves that we have a functional, effective election management body. Of course, these coming elections are going to be very tricky for them because for the first time in the history of our democracy, independent candidates are going to be contesting national and provincial elections. That adds a layer of complexity in terms of the logistics, in terms of the length of the ballot paper, but I can say without any fear of contradiction that the Electoral Commission is up to that task. And all that we have to do as South Africans is to support that organizations and also make sure that we do not violate their dignity. We just, give them that space and the encouragement. All that I have to say is that as South Africans, we have to be very grateful for the Electoral Commission, the work that it has done, the way that they do their work. Because I have worked on the African continent and I know how difficult it is on the African continent, in some countries in the African continent, to manage elections because there's interference by the executive. There are all sorts of things happening. But here in this country, the executive, the government, including parliament, they allow the Electoral Commission space to do their work. And my appeal also is to the political parties to say that they have to respect the independence of the Electoral Commission. And by that, I do not mean that they should turn a blind eye when the Electoral Commission do not run the elections in terms of the law. But if they see that there are shortcomings or there are violations of the law, then they must then take matters to the court so that the court can deal with the matters. That's my appeal to political parties in particular as we prepare for this historic election that is going to celebrate 30 years of our democracy.
You spoke about the political parties. The issue of the noise around already some saying these elections will not be free and fair. You have worked in this institution. How strong are the regulations, the processes to ensure that there is no room for rigging of elections? You have worked here. You know better as the CEO, later as the chairperson.
The IEC has very robust systems. And the systems are not only robust, they are also transparent. And that is very important. So as I sit here, I can say again without any fear of contradiction that the IEC will be able to manage a free and fair election. Because as I say, there are checks and balances within that system. If you look at the results management system, it's a system that is available, not only to the political party, to the media. You have worked at the results center for many years, and that center epitomizes transparency. It can never get more transparent than that.
And then women issues. You also worked at the Human Rights Commission. 30 years on, where are we? Some are saying we've regressed.
I think so, particularly when it comes to top leadership in the political sphere. If you look at the number of women who are premiers at the moment, who have slided, because previously we had more women than we have now. Of course, as far as members of parliament are concerned, I think we are doing well. But when it comes to leaders of political parties, how many women do we have as leaders of political parties? I know there's the Good Party, which is
a new party,
and maybe the new party. But otherwise, 30 years into our democracy, how can we still have only 2 women?
And women are dominating the voters' roll.
Yes, the voters' roll. I'm told that 55% of voters on the voters' roll are women. So political parties have to stop paying lip service to the issue of empowerment of women and their participation. We want to see more women at the leadership of political parties, because it is only through that we can begin to talk about having for the first time a woman as the president of this country. I'm encouraged, I must say, by the fact that for the first time in the history of our country, we are going to have a woman chief justice. I think that's a moment to be celebrated.
And finally, again on elections, you are now working on issues that are dealing with regulation of access to information. On the continent, there's a tendency during elections to abuse the digital space, or the government switching off internet. What is your observation?
Of course, in the continent, that happens a lot. In the run-up to an election, you see the internet being shut under the guise of addressing fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. I'm concerned particularly I'm concerned by the line between freedom of expression and fake news. What is fake news? Where does it start and where does it end? And where does freedom of expression begin and where does it end? Because sometimes there is a blurring of those lines. That's when you see the internet being shut to deal with fake news or misinformation. I think if we want to deal effectively with misinformation and disinformation, and I also have to say that it is true that misinformation and disinformation in this age of the digital technology is probably one of the biggest threats to democracy. But we have to find effective ways of addressing this matter. And one of the effective ways of addressing the matter is to engage digital platforms themselves and holding them accountable for what they carry on their platforms.